guys, my name is Kanika and I'll be taking your math session which is based on the topic data handling. So let us understand in brief what data handling basically means. Data handling is when you are tabulating your data or presenting your data in the form of diagrams and tables. That makes it easier to understand and to read. So let's understand by this topic, by the slides. So how do we understand this and how do we represent the data? Let me share my screen to you. Please wait for a moment. Okay. So as we discussed, data handling, it has a good weightage in the exams. It consists of almost 8 marks in your final exams. And we will be learning about bar graphs, pictographs, tally marks, double bar graphs, and we will be talking about pie charts as well. That would be a new thing for you. So let's understand how do we go for it. So first is we will be talking about the topics which are, as we discussed previously, pictograph, bar graph, and then we will be talking about double bar graphs also. And we will be talking about how to group the data. Grouping of data means we can have two types. First is continuous, and second one would be discrete. So we will be learning this in later stages of the slides. Let's understand them one by one. First is graphical representation of data. So graphical representation means how do you represent the data in the form of graphs? There are various graphs which can help you. First is line graph. Then you have stem and leaf plot. Although stem and leaf plot is not a part of CBSE, but this is very easy way. You can check it out on Google. It would be an extra knowledge for you. Then bar graphs, which you have already done in grade 6 and 7. Then we have histograms also. Then we have line plots, box and whisker plot, and then frequency tables. Frequency tables would be again continuous and discrete. We will be learning this in detail in later stages of the slides. Then you have circular graph, which is known as pie chart. So let's read the statements. Graphical representation is a way of analyzing numerical data. It exhibits the relation between data, ideas, information, and concepts in the form of diagram. As we know that this is human tendency. When you look at something, it gets printed in your mind and it is easy to recapture or it is easy to recall those things, right? So we represent the data in the form of diagrams. That is known as data handling, or those are known as graphs basically. It always depends on the type of information in a particular domain. There are different types of graphical representations. So different types of information, as in if you have a lot of data, we draw histograms. If you compare data, comparison of data is done through pie charts, or it could be double bar graphs also. Then you have, when you plot something against time, then we plot line graphs. All right. So we will be learning them in detail in further stages. Let's understand them one by one. First comes bar graph. So bar graph is basically what? It's a pictorial representation of the data by a series of bars or rectangles of uniform width. So basically, we will be talking about how to plot the bar graphs. Bars are basically what? These are the rectangles of uniform width. Uniform width means you must have seen the graph papers. There are boxes of uniform width, and you have to choose a uniform width for each rectangle or each bar. And one more thing, they haven't mentioned it here, but you have to mention the scale as well. Scale as in what have you represented on x-axis and what have you represented on y-axis. I'll just tell you what x-axis and what y-axis means. So the vertical axis is known as y-axis and horizontal axis is known as x-axis. One more thing, when we are talking about the statistics or the data handling part, it always deals with positive x and positive y values. You will be learning about negative x and negative y values in higher grades. But as of now, we will be talking about only the positive values for x and y, right? So in this graph, they have chosen the y value as number of people. So they have taken the frequency here. And if we talk about the x-axis, so they have represented the data values here. They have represented different fruits as the data values on x-axis and frequency on y-axis. Now, and you can observe from the diagram as well that all the lengths are equal. Width of each bar is equal. They are of equal or uniform width, right? Also, you can draw the bar graph either horizontally or vertically, depending upon the question given to you. Like sometimes in exam, you might be asked for drawing a horizontal bar graph. This one is vertical one because we have the bars as vertical bars. Now they might ask you to draw the horizontal bars as well. So in that case, you have to simply interchange the values of x and y. So we will be taking frequency here, and on y-axis you will be taking data values. And the bars would be something like this. So this one is known as horizontal bar graph. And according to the statements given, each rectangle or bar represents only one numerical value. Like in this case, it is 35. So 35 is the number of people who like apple. Then if we talk about the orange, so this is 30. 30 people like orange. And then you have banana. 10 people like banana. And then you have kiwi fruit, which is equivalent to 25. And then blueberry, which would be equivalent to 40. And then we have grapes, which would be equivalent to 5. Please make sure that you write the scale as well, as in what is mentioned on x-axis and what is mentioned on y-axis. So we would be writing on x-axis, you have represented the fruits, and then on y-axis, you have represented the number of people. Or you can simply write this as 1 centimeter or one box would be equal to, in this they have taken it as 5 units. So you have to mention 5 units as well. This is really, really important because without scale, you cannot read a graph. I hope the bar graphs are clear to you. All right. Because students usually forget to write the scale, and that is the most important part of the graph. Without scale, you cannot read the graph. I'm basically emphasizing on this scale. So make sure that you write the scale. This is really, really important. Let's move further. Let's look at the example question. The following table shows the number of students participating in various games in a school. So you have to draw a bar graph for the same. And then in this case, they have taken the scale as one small square is equals to 3 units. One small square means you have to take the one square equivalent to 3 units. Starting from 0, the next value would be 3, the next value would be 6, and so on. You have to take it along y-axis. This means you have to represent the frequency on y-axis. And these are the data values. This needs to be represented over x-axis. So let's understand how do we draw the graph. Let's look at the next slide. So this is the graph given to you. Look at it as given previously in the hint in the question itself, that you have to take 3 values on y-axis starting from 0. So 0 is the first value, then comes 3, then comes 6, then comes 9, and so on. Don't forget to write the scale, as I told you before as well. Scale is really important. So on x-axis, we have mentioned games. On y-axis, we have mentioned number of students. And what does the scale reads? 1 centimeter is equals to 3 units. As you can see that the scale is 3 units. There is a gap of 3 units in every value. All right. So according to the diagram, according to the given values, if we talk about cricket, it is 27, football is 36, basketball is 18, and tennis would be 12. So we have to take a gap of 3. That means how many boxes will be there in 27? So this would be, you need to divide 27 by 3. There would be 9 boxes covered, right? And if we talk about 36, so in this case, 12 boxes would be covered. In this case, 18 divided by 3, 6 boxes would be covered. And in this case, 12 divided by 3, 4 boxes would be covered. All right. So let's look at the graph again. As we can see that in cricket, 27. So number of boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It should be 9. Starting from 0, it should be 9. So this is the 9th value actually. All right. So in the same way, you can calculate the number of boxes and plot the graphs. Now this is 27. This would be 36. This would be 18. And this would be 12. So this is how you plot a bar graph. Bar graph is basically used to represent the discrete frequency distribution. So discrete frequency distribution means when you have the data value and associated frequency with it. There is no class interval, nothing. So simply a value and then the frequency associated with it. Like for example, you have cricket. So cricket, the value associated is 27. So this is discrete frequency. Like every data value has an associated frequency with it. All right. I hope the bar graphs are clear to you. Fine. Now let's move further. We will be talking about pictographs now. So pictographs are basically, it's like a funniest way of representing the data in the form of graphs. So pictograph is you represent the data value in the form of pictures. Pictures can be any suitable value, any suitable picture according to the diagram, according to the question given. So a pictograph is the representation of data using images. As I told you, you have to represent data in the form of images. And you have to choose the scale again in this case. Like in this, they have chosen 1 vote as 1 smiley. Or you can choose 2 votes as 1 smiley, depending upon the values given. All right. So this is one of the simplest ways to represent the statistical data. And reading a pictograph is made extremely easy as well. This is the basic graph which is used by various other graphs. The idea behind this is to represent the frequency in the easiest way. And we use this idea for the further graphs as well. As we discussed the bar graph, what we did, we represented the frequency in the easiest way, right? By plotting the graphs and by plotting the bars according to the frequency given. In the same way, you can represent the frequency by using pictures. Like for example, in this, they have taken 1 vote as 1 smiley. So if we talk about the apple, so in this case, 1 apple means how many votes? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 is the frequency associated with this fruit. And if we talk about the second one, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7 votes associated with it. With this, you have 2 votes associated. With this, you have 6 votes associated. And hence, you can draw the pictograph easily. One more thing, that you can choose the scale according to the data given. Maybe data values are frequencies, very big numbers, let's say 20. So it's not practically possible to draw 20 smileys. So what you can do is you can take two votes is equals to one smiley. Then obviously you have to draw 10, like if there is this 20 as the number for apple, then you have to draw 10 smileys in that case. Or maybe you can choose any scale. It could be 5, it could be 4, depending upon the values given to you. All right. And choose the pictures wisely depending upon the type of question. All right. Like in this case, we are talking about fruits and votes. Votes are given by the people. So we can draw faces. Or we can simply have, let's say the question is related to bulbs. So you can simply draw a bulb. Maybe I'm not good at drawing, but you can simply draw any kind of diagram for this. All right. I hope this is clear to you. Now let's move further. Let's talk about a question. This is very easy and a very good question. All right. A survey was conducted by a local school for students of grade 6 on how they spend their time on a weekday. The average duration per child was calculated and the data is tabulated in the following pictographs. So, based on the observations, answer the following questions. Now, read the scale first. 1 hour glass represents 2 hours. So, that means this is 2, this is 2. So, this would be equivalent to 4. Again, this would be equivalent to 4. Now, this is a half hour glass. So, this would be equivalent to 1 and so on. Now, what is the average time spent by a child on gadgets? So, this would be 2 into 2 plus 2 into 2. So, answer would be 4 in this case. All right. How many hours on an average does a child sleep during a lockdown? So, sleeping would be how many hours? This would be 2. Just a minute, please. Yeah, this would be 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So, how many hours? 10 hours. What is the total average time spent by a child on academics? So, academics includes online classes and self study as well. So, this would be 4 plus 1, which would be equivalent to 5. Now, how many hours are spent on other activities? So, other activities would be this is 2, 4, and 1. So, answer comes out to be 5 because this half hour glass represents 1. As 1 hour glass represents 2, so half would be 1. All right. Now, let's check our answers. First was 4, that's correct for us. And then the second was 10, again it's correct for us. And 5 and 5. All the answers are correct for us. I hope this complete thing is clear to you. Now let's move further. Now comes the bar graph. It is again same as that of bar graph only. It's just that this is used to analyze and compare 2 or more than 2 data sets. Like for example, if we talk about number of hours that students worked in a month compared to another. Like if we talk about one student of like he is doing work in the month of January and February. So we can compare the data by drawing the bar graphs in the for one single student. Like in this case, they have taken the data for boys and girls. Like how many students like soccer? So out of girls, they like now in girls are 6 and boys would be it is somewhere around 3. Similarly, for is favorite for softball is favorite for both boys and girls. Number are equal. Similarly, if we talk about the basketball girls like 1 and then boys are 5 in this case. And in case of the other games, it could be anything. So girls are 1 and number of boys are 2. So basically you are drawing the bar graph only, but you are comparing 2 different data simultaneously. That is why we are, to compare the data, we are drawing the bar graphs or the double bar graphs, I should say. All right, it's the same. You have to represent frequency on y-axis and data values on x-axis. And you have to simply draw the graphs. We are talking about two frequencies associated with a single data value. Like in this case, soccer is the common single data value which has the frequency associated with it, which is 6 and 3. So this is how it works. All right. So the information in a double bar graph is related and it compares one set of data to another. This needs to be taken care of. All right. Fine. Now let's move further. Let's talk about a question. So in this case, they have taken the scores for students for a practice test and a test. So basically, this is the data value and associated frequencies 60 and 70. So when you draw a graph, if we talk about Jeff, so Jeff has scored in practice test, he has scored 60, and in a final test, he has scored 70. So for Jeff, you have drawn two bars, as in one for practice test and one for the test. Similarly, if we talk about Peter, so this would be 75, and for final test, this would be 90. So this is how it works. I hope you can draw the graph now with all the information and all the explanation given so far. Now let's look at the final graph they have drawn. So this is how the graph looks like. All right. So for Jeff, it is 60 and 70. They have compared the data for a single student in practice test and in the final test. If we talk about Peter, so this would be 75 and 90. If we talk about John, so this would be 55 and 55. Both scores are same. If we talk about Mary, this would be 80 and this would be 95. All right. So this is how you represent the double bar graph for single data value. In this, the data value is students. And the frequencies are scores in the pre-test or the previous or practice test and the final test. Now you make sure that you draw the key as well. Key means which bar represents what. Like in this case, they have taken the orange color for pre-test and green color for final test. So you have to represent the key as well, like what bar represents which thing, so that it is easier to understand what graph depicts. I hope this part is clear to you. Now let's understand organizing and grouping of data. How do we organize and group the data? So grouped data is a statistical term used in data analysis. Raw data can be organized by grouping together similar measurements in the table. This grouped frequency is also called grouped data. Basically, grouping data means when you have a lot of data in abundant amount. So what you do, you represent data in the form of groups. Like for example, you have the scores for 1000 students. So practically it's not possible to write the score of each and every student. So what we do, we group the scores. Like for example, how many students scored 0 to 10? Let's say 90. And if we talk about how many students scored 10 to 20, so let's say 20 people, and so on. So in this way, you can represent the greater amount of data. Like in this 0 to 10, what is the frequency? 2. Like 2 people are there. As I'm taking the example for scores, so two students have scores between 0 to 10. If we talk about 10 to 20, so 10 people have scored between 10 to 20. 21 people have scored between 20 to 30, and so on. So they have taken a total of 60 as of now, and they have grouped the data in the form of intervals. We call them as class intervals. These are class intervals. And if we talk about one of the class interval, let's say 0 to 10, so 0 is known as the lower limit, and this is known as the upper limit. Let's say a student who has scored 10 marks will be counted in the next class interval, not in the first one. All right. So someone who has scored 20 will be counted in the third class interval, not in the second one. So this is how it works. Make sure that you understand this clearly because histograms will be based on this itself. Now let's move further. All right. So these are the practice questions. On a certain day, the temperature in a city was recorded as under. Illustrate the data by a bar graph. So we have already covered the bar graph and it is easier to draw a bar graph now. You have to represent this on x-axis. These are the data values and this would be represented on y-axis as this is the frequency. They haven't mentioned that you have to draw the horizontal bar graph or the vertical bar graph. So until and unless it's not mentioned, you can choose any kind of graph. All right. And choose a scale wisely. Let's see how they have drawn the graph. So in this, time, as I told you, will be taken on x-axis and frequency will be taken on y-axis. That's depicted by the temperature. And make sure that you write the scale as well. Okay. I hope the question is clear. Now let's move to the next one. Double bar graph to compare the favorite ice cream flavors of girls and boys in class 5. So in this case, they have given you the data for boys and girls. Now you can draw the double bar graph since for vanilla, there are two frequencies. For chocolate, there are again two frequencies. For strawberry, they have two frequencies. Mango, two frequencies. So whenever you are drawing the graph, it would be, let's say I'm talking about vanilla. This would be 5 and then 14. This is how it works. And make sure that you write what you are taking below on x-axis and y-axis. And then since we are calculating it for boys and girls, you can draw any pattern. Let's say I'm drawing a lined pattern here and a zigzag in the second bar. So key would be line pattern would be for girls, for boys, sorry. And this one, the zigzag pattern is for girls. So this is the key which you have to mention along with the graph. So these are practice questions for you and you can do them easily. If you find any difficulty, we can discuss it in the next slides. All right. So thank you so much. Enjoy and stay safe at home. Thank you.